two tiny brothers, lost and freezing, beg a cop for help. But when he hears their story, he breaks down in tears. What happened to these kids? And why did this officer risk everything to save them? Stay tuned, this story will break your heart and heal it at the same time. The alley was dark and cold, the kind of place where people walked faster, avoiding eye contact with the shadows. A light drizzle had turned the cracked pavement into a slick, uneven surface. The neon glow from a nearby diner cast a sickly yellow hue over two small figures huddled near a dumpster. They were just children, twin boys, no older than 6, their tiny bodies curled up for warmth beneath thin, tattered jackets. Ezra clutched his brother Malik tightly, his small fingers gripping the fabric of his sleeve. Malik was shivering, his teeth chattering so loudly that it almost masked the distant hum of traffic. They had been waiting for hours, waiting for their mother to come back, but deep down, Ezra already knew, she wasn't coming. People had passed by. Some had glanced their way, but none had stopped. Some had crossed the street. A few had even thrown them looks of pity, but pity wasn't warmth. Pity wasn't food. Ezra's stomach ached with hunger. The last meal he remembered was a half-eaten sandwich 2 days ago. His mother had given it to them before disappearing into the night, promising she'd be back. She always said that. Sometimes she kept her word. But not this time. Malik whimpered beside him. Ezra. I'm cold. His voice was barely more than a whisper. Ezra's chest tightened. He didn't know what to do. He was the older one, by 3 minutes, but those 3 minutes meant everything. He was supposed to take care of Malik. And then he saw him. A man, stepping out of the diner across the street. A police officer. His uniform was dark, his badge glinting under the streetlights. He was holding a cup of coffee, talking to another officer near a patrol car. Ezra had seen cops before. Sometimes they were the ones who came knocking on their door when neighbors complained about the shouting. Sometimes they took people away. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, Ezra didn't see a cop. He saw a grown-up. Someone who could help. His heart pounded as he stood up, his legs wobbly from exhaustion. He barely had the strength to walk, but he forced himself to move. Step by step, he crossed the street, his tiny sneakers splashing through puddles. The officer turned just as Ezra reached him. The boy reached out with his freezing hand and tugged at the man's sleeve. Officer Stephen Marlowe looked down. What he saw made his breath catch. A child, tiny, frail, with dark, terrified eyes staring up at him. His lips were trembling, his face smudged with dirt and dried tears. Behind him, another boy sat on the curb, hugging himself, shaking. Then came the voice. Small. Broken. Desperate. Please, help us. Marlowe froze. Something in his chest twisted, hard. He had been a cop for years. He had seen things that haunted him. But nothing, had ever made his throat tighten like this. His coffee slipped from his fingers, hitting the ground with a splash. He didn't even notice. The police station was warmer than the alley, but the boys still shivered. Whether from the cold that had settled deep into their bones or from fear, Officer Stephen Marlowe wasn't sure. He watched as they sat together on the bench in the station's quiet corner, their tiny bodies pressed against each other, as if afraid they might be separated at any moment. Marlowe had seen a lot in his years on the force, runaways, lost kids, broken families, but something about these boys unsettled him. Maybe it was the way they didn't cry. Maybe it was the way their large, hollow eyes darted around the room, never resting, always searching for something, someone, who wasn't there. A young officer, Martinez, approached with 2 cups of hot cocoa. Thought they could use something warm, he said, placing the cups on the small table in front of them. Ezra eyed the drink cautiously before wrapping his small hands around it. Malik hesitated, glancing at his brother for reassurance before picking his up, too. They sipped slowly, as if afraid the warmth might disappear if they drank too fast. Marlowe crouched in front of them, keeping his voice gentle. "Can you tell me your names?" Ezra's fingers tightened around his cup. "Ezra," he said softly. Malik didn't answer at first. Ezra nudged him, and finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, the younger twin said, "Malik." Marlowe nodded. "That's a good start. You boys are doing great. Now, can you tell me where your mom is?" At that, both boys stiffened. Ezra looked down at his drink, his knuckles white against the cup. Malik just shook his head. Marlowe exchanged a glance with Martinez. He had seen this reaction before, kids who had learned that talking about their parents could mean getting taken away. "We're not here to get anyone in trouble," Marlowe assured them. "We just want to make sure you're safe." Ezra's lips pressed together, his little shoulders rising in tension. She said she'd come back," he finally whispered. Marlowe's jaw tightened. He had suspected as much. "When did she leave?" Ezra hesitated. 2 nights ago." Marlowe's stomach dropped. 2 nights. These boys had been alone, in the cold, for 2 whole nights. Malik's voice trembled. "She always comes back." Ezra didn't look so sure. Marlowe exhaled, forcing himself to stay calm. He knew what happened to kids like this. He had seen it too many times before. A mother struggling with addiction, disappearing for hours, then days, sometimes forever. Children left behind, forced to take care of themselves in a world that didn't care if they were hungry, cold, or scared. He wanted to be wrong. He needed to be wrong. "Do you know where she might have gone?" Ezra hesitated again. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "She goes to the bad place." Marlowe's pulse quickened. "What bad place?" Ezra's fingers traced the rim of his cup. "The house with the red door." Marlowe felt something cold settle in his gut. He knew that place. A run-down house on the east side of the city, notorious for drugs, gangs, and people who didn't care about anything but their next high. It was no place for a mother. No place for children. Marlowe stood. "Martinez, run a check on a woman named," he stopped, looking back at the boys. "What's your mom's name?" Ezra swallowed hard. "Raven." "Raven Harper," Malik added softly. Martinez nodded and hurried off. Marlowe turned back to the boys, his expression softer now. "We're going to find her, okay? In the meantime, you're safe here." Ezra said nothing, just stared into his cup. Malik, though, looked up at Marlowe with wide, searching eyes. "Promise?" Marlowe hesitated, then knelt beside him. "I promise." He just hoped it wasn't a promise he'd have to break. Marlowe stood outside the house with the red door, his breath visible in the cold night air. The place looked worse than he remembered, windows covered with cardboard, graffiti staining the walls, garbage piled up along the sidewalk. A single, flickering porch light cast eerie shadows over the cracked steps. He had been here before. Knew what kind of people lurked inside. Drug dealers, addicts, desperate souls with nowhere else to go. It was a place where people disappeared, where promises were broken, and where children like Ezra and Malik were forgotten. Marlowe clenched his jaw. Not this time. Behind him, Officer Martinez shifted uncomfortably. "You sure she's in there?" Marlowe nodded. "We'll find out soon enough." They approached the door, stepping carefully to avoid broken glass. Marlowe rapped his knuckles against the wood. Silence. Then, movement inside. A shuffle of feet. A whispered conversation. Marlowe knocked again, harder this time. "Police. Open up." More whispers. Then, finally, the door creaked open just an inch, revealing a sliver of a gaunt, hollow-eyed man in his 40s. His clothes were wrinkled, his skin pale and covered in sweat. The kind of man who had seen better days a long, long time ago. Cops? The man licked his lips nervously. We ain't got no trouble here, man. Marlowe ignored him. We're looking for Raven Harper. She here? The man hesitated, eyes darting to the side. A mistake. Marlowe pushed forward, forcing the door open. The stench hit him first, a mix of stale beer, sweat, and something chemical, something rotten. The living room was littered with stained furniture, empty bottles, and burned spoons. A few people slumped in corners, too far gone to notice the officers. Then, he saw her. Raven Harper sat on a filthy couch, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Her dark hair was tangled, her eyes sunken and empty. She looked nothing like the mother Marlowe had imagined. But when she saw him, something flickered in her expression. Fear. Where are my kids? Her voice cracked. Marlowe didn't answer right away. He studied her, really looked at her. She was barely holding herself together. Her fingers twitched, her body swayed slightly as if she might collapse at any moment. You left them, he said finally. Raven flinched. I didn't mean to. They waited for you, Marlowe interrupted, his voice sharper than he intended. For 2 nights. Her breath hitched. She covered her face with her hands. I was coming back. I just needed. Marlowe's patience snapped. Needed what? Another hit? Raven trembled. She didn't answer. Martinez, standing beside him, shifted uncomfortably. Marlowe exhaled, forcing himself to calm down. Yelling at her wouldn't help. He needed to get through to her. He crouched down so he was at her level. Listen to me, Raven. Your boys still believe you're coming back. Malik asks about you every night. Ezra, he won't say it, but he's scared you won't come. Her shoulders shook. I love them, she whispered. Then prove it, Marlowe said firmly. Because right now, they're with child services. And if you don't do something, you're going to lose them for good. That hit her like a slap. She looked up at him, her eyes suddenly wide and frantic. No, she breathed. No, they can't take them. They're mine. Marlowe stood. Then get yourself together. Raven wiped her face with shaking hands, as if trying to push away years of failure, of regret. I don't know how, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Marlowe studied her. He had seen people like her before, people too far gone, too broken to fix. But there was something different about her. Maybe it was the way she said her children's names. Maybe it was the way she hadn't completely given up. You start by standing up, he said. Raven stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she pushed herself off the couch. She swayed but stayed on her feet. Marlowe nodded. That's step 1. She swallowed hard. And step 2. He met her gaze. You come with us. For the first time, she didn't argue. She just nodded. The fluorescent lights in the rehab center buzzed faintly, casting a harsh glow over the sterile white walls. The place smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, a mixture of desperation and hope lingering in the air. Raven sat stiffly in the intake chair, her fingers twisting in her lap. She had been here before, different buildings, different programs, but it had never felt like this. This time, it wasn't just about her. This time, 2 little boys were waiting for her to come back. Marlowe stood nearby, arms crossed, watching as the intake nurse filled out paperwork. He had brought her here himself, driving in silence while she stared out the window, her mind a tangled mess of regret and withdrawal. She had asked about them, about Ezra and Malik. Are they okay? She had whispered. They're safe, Marlowe had answered. That should have been a relief. But it wasn't. Because they weren't with her. And she had no one to blame but herself. Now, as she sat in the chair, exhaustion weighing her down, the nurse cleared her throat. Name? Raven Harper. Age? 31. The questions went on: medical history, drug use, emergency contacts. When they reached the last part, Raven hesitated. Do you have family we can list? The nurse asked. Family. The word felt foreign. She used to have a sister, but they hadn't spoken in years. Her parents were long gone. Ezra and Malik were all she had left, and she wasn't even sure if she still counted as their mother. No one, she whispered. Marlowe shifted behind her. She didn't look at him. The nurse gave a small nod and scribbled something down. You'll be in a 90-day program, minimum, she said. We have counseling, detox, group therapy. It's going to be hard. Hard. Raven almost laughed. Hard was knowing your kids were sleeping on a park bench because you left them. Hard was feeling your body shake from withdrawal but still craving the very thing that destroyed you. She exhaled shakily. Okay. The nurse stood. Let's get you settled. Raven followed, her legs unsteady as she walked down the hallway. Marlowe didn't say anything as she left, but she could feel his eyes on her.